Ma'am, you're on mute, ma'am.
Sorry. Okay. So what I was actually telling is, we have discussed about these steps. Okay, so these stages in the yesterday's class started with the screening, aeration, sedimentation. So ultimately, we have reached to the final stage of the water treatment, that is the sterilization and disinfection process. Okay, so we actually started with the disinfectant also. What exactly is disinfectant? Can somebody define disinfectant?
Substance which
Disinfectant is
kills microorganisms.
microorganisms. Okay. So most commonly used disinfectant for the water treatment is
Chlorine and ozone.
chlorine. Mostly chlorine is used. Along with the chlorine, you have other chlorinating agents like chloramine, bleaching powder. Other than that, even you can opt for ozone. Okay. So we'll see what are the benefits and why we are not using ozone as frequently as chlorine is being used. Okay. So we'll just start with the first one, that is the chlorination process. Okay, so the disinfection process of the chlorination can be done by using the chlorinating agents, and you know chlorine is considered to be a ideal disinfectant. Okay, among the three chlorinating agents, you have the chloramine as one example. Second example is bleaching powder, and third one is the chlorine. Okay, so this is the most commonly used disinfectant, and it is a ideal disinfectant. Yesterday's class we have discussed which chlorinating agent, a, why a disinfectant is called as a ideal disinfectant. There are certain characteristics associated with it. What are they? When can you say a disinfectant as an ideal one? Ideal disinfectant. See, its usage should be like when you are using it, its cost must be less, right? You remember or not?
Yes, ma'am.
It should
Yes,
not
ma'am.
cause any harm. It should not cause any harm either during storage or during the conveyance, right? That means it should be quite stable. If it is unstable, it can form some other compound. Okay, and that would be causing it would be leading to some other problem. Okay, then what else? You remember or not, girls? Ideal disinfectant. It should be non-toxic to humans, right? Okay, so these are the some important points what makes the chlorine as an ideal disinfectant. Okay, next, we'll first discuss with the chloramine. Okay, now chloramine is also an important chlorinating agent. Now, how chloramine can be prepared? That is the first step we'll see. Now, chlorine gas when it is mixed with the ammonia in the ratio 2 is to 1. So 2 is to 1, you have to mix chlorine with ammonia, and this forms a stable compound, that is the chloramine. Okay, ClNH2. ClNH2 is your chloramine. Okay, in this reaction, you can see along with the chloramine, you can also see the formation of HCl. Now, this chloramine, which is produced, this reacts with the water and generates the hypochlorous acid. HOCl is called as a hypochlorous acid. Along with this, you can also see ammonia will be released into the water. And the main reason for the disinfecting action of the chloramine is HOCl. Okay, so this is the HOCl is the hypochlorous acid. Hypochlorous acid is your HOCl. And how this is going to deactivate the function of the bacteria, or how it is going to kill the bacteria? This will deactivate the enzymatic system, that is the enzymes. Now, what is the role of enzymes? Like for any living organism, what is the role of enzymes? How, in what way enzymes are useful to the living organisms? Enzymes are nothing but the biocatalyst, right? Okay. Now, if enzymes are deactivated, all the metabolic activities will come to standstill. Okay, that means the bacteria will be killed. Okay, got the point, girls?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, like suppose if this is asked in an objective, what is responsible for the disinfecting action of chloramine? So your answer is what? Your answer is hypochlorous acid. Okay,
Hypo.
hypochlorous acid. Okay, so please do underline that. Okay, and this is mostly used for disinfecting the swimming pools. For swimming pools, you can use the chloramine as a disinfecting reagent. Okay, so this is about the chloramine. So when you are attempting this answer, you have to mention the reactions even, girls. Just writing chloramine is useful as disinfecting agent will not be sufficient. You have to mention even these two reactions also. The next one, bleaching powder. Yeah, everybody is familiar with the bleaching powder, right? So its formula is CaOCl2. Okay, and this contains 80% of chlorine. Okay, so this contains 80% of chlorine. Now, when you add bleaching powder to the water, when you add bleaching powder to the water, this forms calcium hydroxide and releases free chlorine into the water. Now, this chlorine, on reaction with the water, produces hypochlorous acid and hydrochlorous acid. Okay, so once again, the disinfecting action of bleaching powder is due to the formation of hypochlorous acid. Okay, hypochlorous acid is responsible for killing the microorganisms. So that means either in the case of chloramines or in the case of bleaching powder, the acid responsible for the disinfecting action would be your hypochlorous acid. Okay, and coming to the third one is your chlorine. Okay, so chlorination. So the commonly used disinfecting reagent is chlorine. Okay, already we know why it is called as an ideal disinfectant. Now, how to use this? So usually chlorine will be used in an apparatus called as chlorinator. Okay, the apparatus is called as chlorinator. In the next diagram, you have this. So this is how your chlorinator looks like. And here you have inlets for the supply of raw water. Okay, so this is the inlet for supply of raw water, and from here you have to supply the concentrated chlorine solution, and these are the baffle plates. And why the baffle plates will be used? This is to control the rate of flow of water. The baffle plates are used. So slowly, the moment you add the water into this chlorinator, and when you supply the chlorine to this, both of them will get mixed thoroughly. And I'll just show you the reactions here. And how much you are going to add the chlorine is around zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 ppm chlorine must be added to the water. Okay, now this requires around 15 for the disinfection process to be completed, and the water which is free from all the impurities would be collected through the outlet. So this is the outlet through which the sterilized water will be collected. Okay, now here mechanical deaeration process is employed in the chlorinator. Okay, so thorough mixing of raw water with the chlorine solution will be done in the chlorinator, and this requires a total of 15 minutes time. Okay, understood, girls?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What exactly happens? I'll just tell you. So when you add chlorine to the water, okay, when you are adding chlorine to the water, it produces HOCl and HCl. So here also you come across the formation of hypochlorous acid. Like you have hypochlorous acid produced in the case of chloramines, HOCl. Then in the case of bleaching powder, again HOCl. So here also you have the formation of hypochlorous acid. So in all the three chlorinating agents, the reason for the reason for the disinfecting action is because of the formation of hypochlorous acid. So please do underline this. Okay. So this is the chlorinator. This is the process how it is carried out. Then next we have breakpoint chlorination. Okay, let me ask you a question here. Mm, See, how do we know how much chlorine must be added to the water in order to um, kill all the bacteria present in the water? Like suppose if the municipalities are there, okay, how will they know how much of chlorine is required for disinfecting action? Like suppose if I say that water is supplied through a nearby river. Okay, if you just go and stand nearby the river, add chlorine to the river water, and that is all done. Okay, that's how you can know how much of chlorine is required for killing the bacteria. How do we know that? Without knowing if I add excess of chlorine to the water, what are the consequences? So that
It
means
will become
if you
toxic.
are adding, yes, yes, ma, continue.
If we add excess chlorine, it will become toxic now.
Very good. So if you're adding excess of chlorine, that will actually induces bad taste, okay, color, and also it's unpleasant. Okay, we cannot really drink that water if it is having excess of the chlorinating agent. Like some of you might have experienced the bleaching agent when it is added excess to the drinking water, that smell and that flavor, odor, you cannot really we cannot agree with that. Okay, like it's not so pleasant to drink that kind of water. Okay, that's all happens. Okay, if excess of chlorine is added to the water. Now suppose if I add less amount of chlorine to the water, what will happen? Excess means these problems will face if we add less amount of chlorine to the water.
Some impurities will remain
Then
in the
how?
water still.
Exactly, excellent, excellent. Okay, so the disinfecting action will not be reached. Okay, so we cannot able to kill all the bacteria or the impurities whatever we come across in the drinking water, all those cannot be removed as effectively. But if you are adding excess we can achieve this target like killing the bacteria, everything can be done, but we'll be left over with the water still having that flavor, that odor, taste, and toxic. Okay, so two sides. Okay, two sides. Like if we add excess, we have certain problems, and if we add less, the disinfecting action cannot be reached efficiently. Okay, then what to be done? What to be done then? We should add chlorine to such an amount that should be able to satisfy both the conditions. Like it should try to remove all the impurities in the water along with killing of bacteria, and at the same time it should not be excess amount. Okay, so that all these taste, color, toxic, so all these can be effectively removed. Okay, so there are two targets which we have to achieve here. Okay, so for which we should have an idea about the breakpoint chlorination. Now, what is this breakpoint? Breakpoint is the point at which the chlorine addition must be stopped. Okay, like how much chlorine you are adding to the water. Okay, that must be stopped. Okay, how will you know that? So, how to know like where should be the cutoff? Where should be the cutoff of the addition of the chlorine to the water? Then we can just solve this problem. So this can be done by taking the water samples. Like initially, chlorine will be added to the river water. That sample must be collected and taken to the lab, and certain tests will be done. Okay. Likewise, slowly the amount of chlorine which is added to the water must be increased. So, low doses of chlorine must be added to the river water, and it has to be tested in the lab, and it has to be studied. And by that we can judge like how much amount of chlorine must be added to the water. Okay, so for this you need to understand a graph, okay, which is called as the breakpoint chlorination. Here we have a graph where we plot the amount of chlorine added to the water. Okay, so this is the graph where the amount of chlorine added to the water taken on the x-axis, and on the y-axis we have the residual chlorine, like how much chlorine will be produced at which stage. Okay, so we'll just go through the definition here. The breakpoint chlorination is nothing but the process of applying calculated amount of chlorine to the water in order to kill the pathogenic bacteria is termed as the chlorination. Okay, now chlorine when added to the water, it will kill the bacteria. This already we have studied. Now initially when you add, so how already I told you that the chlorine will not be added at once. Okay, we just have to add in small doses. So the chlorine must be added to the water in small doses. Am I clear, girls? Are you able to follow this? Very, very important question, girls.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So here, just follow this graph. Just follow this graph. Okay. Now you might be wondering what is this A grams, B grams, C and D. Okay. I'm just trying to explain that. Or in some textbooks, you can also see A grams here. Wherever you have this A grams, this will be termed as stage one. Okay. Stage one. So stage two, stage three, and stage four. Okay. I'll just explain you in terms of stages and you will understand what is this A grams. Now, what is this A grams is A grams of chlorine, whatever you are added to the water. So, we'll just start with very, very mild addition of the chlorine dosage to the water sample. Okay. So, let us suppose that, so this particular point, okay, so this particular point you can see right on the graph. So, here, let us suppose that this will start with 0, okay, that is the origin 0, and this here it would be 0.1. Okay, this is 0 and this is 0.1. Now, imagine that we have added a little amount of chlorine to the water. Now, that chlorine, can you see anywhere it's shown in this graph? Anywhere in this area, can you see this black line? So this black
No,
line is
ma'am.
is showing the applied chlorine, like how much chlorine you have applied. So what exactly is happening here? So the small dosage of chlorine, what you have applied to the water, that is entirely used up by the impurities present in water. Okay, so small doses of chlorine will be completely used up by the impurities present in the water, and those impurities will be uh, getting oxidized completely. So here you can remember that in the stage 1, initially for low doses of chlorine, there won't be any free residual chlorine. So whatever the residual chlorine you have added to the water, that will not be seen at the stage 1 because
Ma'am,
whatever
your
the
voice
chlorine
is
you have
breaking,
added.
ma'am.
Now also it's breaking. Now also is it breaking? I have removed the earphones, ma. I'm directly talking through the phone. Okay. So here, how is my voice now? Is it still breaking?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now see that like what I was trying to tell you is in the stage one, the amount of chlorine, whatever you have added, the amount of chlorine, whatever you have added, that will be consumed completely for oxidation of reducing substances. I told you some impurities, right? Now those impurities will be completely oxidized. So therefore, there won't be any traces of the applied chlorine. So that means there are no traces of the residual chlorine. So chlorine is not at all left free at this stage. Okay. Am I clear, girls? Am I
Yes,
clear
ma'am.
now? Okay. So next, what can you see on the screen? So we just go ahead with the next stage, that is stage two. So this is the stage two. This is the stage two. Now here you can see. we just have slightly increased the dosage of chlorine. Okay, from left to the right, as you are moving from left to the right, you can see there is increase in the dosage of chlorine. Now, why is that this graph has increased? Because the amount of chlorine, whatever you have added, that is used for the formation of chloroorganic compounds and chloroamino compounds. So that means the chlorine added here is used up for the formation of a chloroorganic compounds and chloroamino compounds, and that is what we see as a combined residual chlorine in the stage 2. Okay, so therefore there is a steep increase in the residual chlorine. Now, again, there is a dip in the curve, right? There is a dip in the curve in stage 3. So, in the stage 3, whatever the chlorine dosage you have slightly increased. Okay, so from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, again, there is increase in the dosage of chlorine. Now, with the application of higher dose of chlorine, added chlorine, the organic compounds, like we are talking about the organic compounds present in the water, along with that microorganisms, all of these will get oxidized. So the chloroorganic compounds, chloroamino compounds, chloroorganic chloroamino compounds, they get oxidized along with the microorganisms. So all the chlorine whatever added in the third stage will be completely used for the destruction of all the kinds of the impurities present in water, be it pathogenic bacteria or be it organic compounds. All those will be completely destroyed by the stage 3. Okay, so that means if you are adding chlorine even after stage 3, okay, stage 3, there here you can see there is a further increase in the residual chlorine content. So that means this graph will go on increasing only as you are increasing the dosage of chlorine after stage 3. Okay, subsequently even the residual chlorine will also go on increasing. Now why it happens? Because all the impurities present in the water will get completely oxidized in the stage 3 only. So after stage 3, whatever chlorine you are adding, that will be left freely in the water without being used up by any of the impurities. So therefore, that is going to cause harm, or that is going to impart a pleasant, peculiar taste and odor to the water. So therefore, you just have to see that you have to cut off the addition of chlorine at this stage. So that means this is the break point. So this is a break point for the addition of the chlorine. Okay, have you understood now? So you have to stop the addition of chlorine at which stage? Can you see this minima, girls? The added chlorine is not used in any reaction now. So this is the residual chlorine which keeps on increasing in the direct proportion to the added chlorine. Are you getting my point, girls?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Here, so this is the minima. So this minima in the curve, this minima in the graph is said to be breakpoint chlorination. So the chlorine added to the water must be added till this point only. After then, you should stop the addition of chlorine. Otherwise, the residual chlorine keeps on increasing directly in direct proportion with the added chlorine. So we just don't want this part. We just want only this part. So therefore, this is termed as the breakpoint chlorination. I repeat, girls. So this is the graph for the breakpoint chlorination. So what can you get? What information can you get from the breakpoint chlorination? Yes. Yes, girls.
The amount of
What is
chlorine added.
breakpoint chlorination? Yeah, how much amount of chlorine must be added to the water so that it kills the microorganisms present in the water along with the other impurities. That is the main aim of this breakpoint chlorination. Okay, so how many stages are there in the breakpoint chlorination?
3.
Three stages, four stages. There are four
Four,
stages:
ma'am.
one, two, three, four. Okay, now initially when you add chlorine, okay, there are no traces of residual chlorine. Why? Why there are no traces of residual chlorine initially? Yes. Can you hear me, girls?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, tell me. So where it is going? The chlorine, whatever you have applied initially, where is it exactly going? You cannot see any of its traces in the graph because it is
It
completely
gets
used up
oxidized,
for the
ma'am.
oxidation of oxidation of reducing impurities. The impurities which are present in the water, those reducing impurities will completely get oxidized in the first stage. And with the slight increase in the dosage of chlorine, what will happen in the stage? Chlorine will react with the organic compounds and amino compounds and form chloroorgano compounds and chloroamino compounds. That means it is in the combined state. Okay. Then next, in the stage 3, as you are further increasing the addition of chlorine to the water, what will happen here? What will happen here as you are further increasing the addition or the dosage of chlorine to the water? This is the most important thing where you can see there is a decrease in the graph. Why the graph is decreasing? Because it resulting in the oxidation of
Oxidation of water, ma'am.
organic compounds, amino compounds, as well as microorganisms. So destruction of microorganisms along with the chloroamino compounds formed in the stage 2. Even those gets oxidized completely in the stage 3. So that means all the impurities will be completely destroyed. Okay, completely get converted. Okay, in the stage 3. And which represents the breakpoint chlorination in this graph? Which point? Which point represents the minima in the graph? Breakpoint.
D point.
Okay.
Yeah, this one. This one. This is the minima in the graph is nothing but your breakpoint chlorination. So what will happen after the breakpoint chlorination? Why the residual chlorine is going on increasing? Why it is directly proportional to the amount of added chlorine? As the addition of chlorine increases, even this graph also goes on increasing. Why is it so? Because all the impurities have used up the chlorine only till stage 3. After stage 3, that is in the during the stage 4, this chlorine is not used up by the any kind of impurities or any kind of the bacteria. So therefore this chlorine will be left free, and that is called as the free residual chlorination or breakpoint chlorination. Important question, girls. What is breakpoint chlorination or free residual chlorination? So this entire graph you have to explain. Any doubts here? Any doubts here?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, so just go through this theory part afterwards. Now, what are the advantages with the breakpoint chlorination? Okay, can you tell me now? What are the advantages of this breakpoint chlorination?
It removes
Bec-
the taste, odor, organic compounds of pure water, ma'am.
Yeah, we were actually talking about the oxidation of the impurities, right? Okay, if the impurities are not oxidized, they actually result in the odor, color, and then um, toxicity to the water. So all those can be removed with the help of breakpoint chlorination. And not only that, efficiency of this breakpoint chlorination is that it kills pathogenic bacteria completely. And the third point is it prevents the growth of weeds in water. What are weeds? Weeds are nothing but the unwanted plants. So these are the advantages of the breakpoint chlorination. Now, just now we have seen in the graph 4, okay, that is nothing but over-chlorination. After the break point, it actually produces unpleasant taste, odor, and toxicity to the water. In case if you have added excess of chlorine, then these chemicals will help in removing those excess of chlorine. Okay, how over-chlorination is removed by passing water through a bed of granular carbon and also by addition of sulfur dioxide and sodium thiocyanate. Okay, so these are the reactions. So when you are adding sodium sulfur dioxide, okay, this actually forms sulfuric acid to HCl, and and then next you have NaSO3, that is sodium thiosulfate. Okay, sodium sulfite is there. So sodium sulfide, this reacts with the chlorine and forms sodium sulfate. Here, this is the plus sign, girls. This is the plus sign. Correct this one. So sulfur Na2SO3. It's not sodium thiosulfate. Sodium sulfate. Sulfite. You can write. I'm just correcting this. It's not sulfate. It is sulfite. Na2SO3. This is plus sign. Okay. So with this we complete the chlorination process. We'll move to the next one, that is ozonization. Clear, girls? Any doubts in this? Any doubts, girls?
No, ma'am.
Coming to the disinfection process, how it is done by using ozone. Okay. And I'll also tell you why ozone is not used, like how frequently the chlorine is used. Now, ozone, it is highly unstable. This will liberate the nascent oxygen. Okay, so ozone on like it is dissociated and forms oxygen and nascent oxygen. So nascent oxygen is responsible for the disinfecting action. Okay, here you can see this oxidizes the organic matter present in the water and also kill the bacteria. And the process is called as the ozonization. The process is called as the ozonization. And ozonization process will be done in the ozone thermometer. Remember we discussed about chlorinator, right? Right place here you have ozonizer. Yeah, this is more and daily expense much can be in the water for the large quantity of water cannot be treated because it involves like the process becomes more expensive. Now here you can see this is the ozonizer or ozone stabilizer. The water is applied like this, and this is another inlet for the supply of ozone. Okay, ozone O3, and then you can see here these two will get thoroughly mixed in the water, thoroughly mixed in the tank like this. Raw water and ozone will get thoroughly mixed in the tank, and then the water is sent out. Okay, maybe after 15 minutes of time. Okay, so that is the time required for the reaction between the ozone and the water. Okay, and ozone around 2 to 3 ppm. Here you can see 2 to 3 ppm of ozone must be added to the water, and 15-20 minutes time should be given for the sterilization process to be completed. Okay, now once the water is disinfected, then this disinfected water can be removed from the outlet at the top of the sterilizer. Here you have an outlet. Yes, what is there? So this is what you have to explain about the disinfection process. Am I clear, girls?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now the breakpoint chlorination advantages, then chlorination, ozonization. So all these things you are supposed to write if you are attempting this answer, girls. Municipal water treatment. If you are attempting, you have to conclude your answer. Okay. So all these steps you have to write because this would be a lengthy answer, not a short answer type or very short answer type. Following girls.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, then we are having another topic that is a reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis. Yeah, I'll just show you a picture here. I think everybody is familiar with the osmosis, right? Osmosis process. Say yes or no.
Yes, ma'am.
What will happen in the osmosis process? Yes.
Movement of particles from lower concentration to higher concentration.
Okay. Movement of which particles? You're saying particles. Which one?
Solute particles, ma'am.
Solute particles or solvent particles? There is can you see this plus? This image for your reverse osmosis. Okay. Now, two things you should understand, right? Okay. What is osmosis and what is the necessity for reverse osmosis? First of all, we should understand what exactly is osmosis. Any idea what is osmosis? Vatsalya said movement of solute particles. I say it's incorrect. Can somebody tell me the correct definition for osmosis? Osmosis means movement of solvent girls, not solute. So of solvent from lower concentration to higher concentration. Okay. So movement of solvent from lower concentration to higher concentration is said to be osmosis, and that happens through a semi-permeable membrane. Through a semi-permeable membrane, and lower concentration means water which contains less amount of salts in it, so that we usually consider as a pure water. And from this side, so the light blue color is your pure water, and through the semi permeable membrane. So here in the middle you have the a membrane like thing where you have small holes. Okay, so imagine this to be your semi permeable membrane. From here, from this side, movement is going like this. The solvent is moving up. Okay, so which side? The brackish water or sea water, this usually contains the high concentration of salts in it. So from lower concentration to higher concentration through the semi membrane, then it is defined as the osmosis. Okay, Then what about the reverse osmosis? Reverse osmosis, how does it happen?
High concentration to low concentration.
Okay, the arrow must be reversed. So earlier osmosis means from light blue shade to the little green side. Okay, now this arrow, what you can see, can you make out, girls, with my mouse? Okay, so yeah, here you can see it is reversed. Okay, the direction of the flow of solvent is reversed from where it is now. From higher concentration, the solvent is flowing from higher concentration to lower concentration in the case of reverse osmosis, provided you have a hydrostatic pressure which is applied on the higher concentration side. Then you are forcing the water to move from higher concentration side to the lower concentration side. Okay, again here you require a semi permeable membrane, there is no doubt in it, but here you have to apply a hydrostatic pressure which is greater than your osmotic pressure. Okay, because for the osmosis process to occur, you require the driving force would be the osmotic pressure. So whatever osmotic pressure generated, okay, you have to measure that and you have to apply more than the osmotic pressure in the reverse direction, so that you can reverse the flow of the solvent, that is from higher concentration to lower concentration. Okay, understood? And usually it is said that a pressure of 15 to 40 kilograms per centimeter square is applied. Okay, and the solvent will start separating from higher side to the, like, solvent will start moving from higher side to the lower side. And what is the main aim of the semi-permeable membrane? Why are we using this? Why it is not called as a permeable membrane? Why it is called as semi-permeable? Yes, girls. Can you hear me? What was my question? What is my question, girls? Please do respond. If you know, you can say something. Otherwise, I'll just conclude it. Do you know the answer or not?
It does not allow the entire solvent to flow through it, ma'am.
See, if I say solution, what does it contain? It contains solvent and solute particles, right? Okay. So here we are talking about the flow of solvent. Here nowhere we are mentioning about the solute particles. So where are those solute particles getting trapped off? The solute particles will be are not allowed to pass through from this side to the other side or from the other side to this side. Okay, so that is the main purpose of using the semi-permeable membrane. So semi means what? Partial, right? Okay, so what is it doing partially? It is not allowing the solute particles. So all solute particles will be retained in the semi-permeable membrane, and this is mostly porous. Okay, and this makes sure that only the solvent will be allowed to move from lower to the higher or from higher to the lower side, like whichever process we are talking about. Am I clear now? Have you understood now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So with the reverse process, we can get the uh, water which is free from all the high salts present in it. That is the main principle what we see in all the water filters what we use at homes. Okay. So this is your RO water, what we call as RO water. Now, what is the semi-permeable membrane used here? In this on the screen, you can see it can be either made up of cellulose acetate or polymethacrylate or polyamides. Now, what is the life of these membranes? Like how long these semi-permeable membranes can be used? Because for a period of time, these membranes have to be replaced. Why do you think these membranes have to be replaced with the fresh ones? A
Bacteria.
simple question. Yes, ma. Just now I explained what is the role of a semi-permeable membrane. That is the answer for that. Because all the solute particles will get trapped in the membranes, right? So that means the efficiency of this membrane will come down if it is not being maintained properly. So for every 2 years, this semi-permeable membrane will be replaced with the fresh ones. Okay, and that takes only hardly maybe 15-20 minutes time. So therefore, here again you can have uninterrupted water supply can be provided. So that is the main advantage with this RO water filters. Not only that, this is the very simple process, pretty simple and reliable process. And coming to the capital and the operating expenses, these are low. Okay, and this will operate at a comparatively low temperatures. And not only that, like the silica, colloidal silica, which was actually cannot be removed by demineralization process. Okay, in the demineralization process, external water treatment what we have discussed in the previous classes, okay, there we have a problem of the colloidal silica, but even colloidal silica can be removed effectively by the RO process, okay, reverse osmosis, because here you have the semi permeable membrane which actually um, uh, traps your colloidal silica particles, okay, so which could not be done by demineralization process. This is a better way of getting remove the colloidal silica particles. Okay, so and also it is a relatively energy efficient process. So these are the advantages with the RO process. And where can you use this application? Somebody asks you, what is reverse osmosis? Explain the principles and applications involved in it. So what will you write for this? Applications means what is the main application? What is the main application? Desalination process. Desalination of brackish water. Okay, usually this title would be like that. Brackish water is nothing but the seawater. Seawater is the one which contain high salts in it. Okay, since we are removing the salts, okay, we are uh, converting the water which is having high concentration to low concentration. So this process is called as desalination. Okay, and that is we are doing it for the brackish water or the sea water. So therefore we call this as the desalination of the brackish water. The best treatment for the desalination of brackish water is reverse osmosis process. Understood? Please do
Yes, ma'am.
respond, girls. Yeah, here this is used for desalination, treatment of wastewater. That is the second application. Then third application is for the purification of water, and fourth application is for dialysis in hospitals. And also this can be employed for injections. This water which is free from all the impurities. So for injections also, water for injection, WFI. Okay, WFA on the injection bottles it will be written, right? Okay, so this is a double distilled water. I can say this as a double distilled water. Like where you have a requirement of highly purified water. Okay, so this process can be employed. That is why this process is otherwise called as a super or hyper filtration process. What is this process called other than reverse osmosis? Super or hyper filtration process. Okay. I'll just show you the screen here. The theory part you can just go through from this slide, girls. This is what I've already explained it. Okay. Okay, you can just go through it. Now, next topic, or I can say the last topic of this unit 4 is sewage or wastewater treatment. Okay, water treatment. Any doubts still here, girls?
No, ma'am.
Any doubts still here? Okay, just I'll give you an introduction of the sewage and the steps involved in the sewage water treatment. We'll discuss in tomorrow's class because time may not be sufficient. Uh, what is sewage?
It's wastewater.
Okay, wastewater which is collected from households, okay, or from the restaurants, hotels, okay. So that will be the sewage water. Now, we have to treat this water. Sewage water must be treated before it is actually let into the nearby water bodies or the rivers. Okay. What are the main objectives of treating the sewage water? Why should we treat the sewage water? Treatment means anything which is having impurities within it, we have to just try to purify it. Okay, that is what is meant for the purpose. So, treatment of sewage water is mostly for removing the waste from the water. Okay, along with that, we can try to remove the odor. And in case if the water is not treated, if the sewage water is not treated, and by any chance, if it is getting mixed with the drinking water, then that is actually going to cause a danger to the public health. Why? Because already the sewage water contains high amount of impurities in it. Okay, and that may even contain the microorganisms, and that actually makes the uh, like a big concern for the public health. Okay, because it might be resulting in typhoid, cholera, or hepatitis. Okay, so all these are the dreadful diseases which could be caused if the water is not treated and then it is let into the river body directly. Okay, and to change the quality of water, yeah, that's what we are discussing, and so that it can be safely discharged into the river water, because that river water itself is used for that river water will be used for municipalities for drinking purpose, and even the discharge should be safe because it can be let into even seas also, so impurities will be just simply carried away. Now, what exactly the sewage contains? Sewage contains a complex mixture of chemicals which are having high concentration of ammonia, nitrate, phosphorus, and these will have high conductivity and alkalinity. Okay, so sewage is a complex mixture of the chemicals. Now, how many steps are there in the treatment process? Okay, so this is also a very, very important question. Okay, either you can expect the potable water treatment, that is the municipal water treatment, or it can be a sewage water treatment process. Now, there are three steps involved here. First step or the first treatment of sewage would be the preliminary process. Second one is the settling process, and third one is the biological treatment process. So this is a flow chart, raw water, how it is sent to the screening stage, then sedimentation, then activated sludge or trickling filters, then from there sedimentation, chlorination, treated discharge. So about these sewage treatment processes, how many ways are there, like how many stages are there, and what are the reactions, and about the detailed description, we'll just go through in tomorrow's class. Is that okay, girls?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you people free on Tuesday, girls? Yes, Harshia.
No, ma'am.